Welcome to Community Homeworks Workshop this evening. Tonight we are talking about storm windows and storm window repair. We're glad you're joining us. Community Homeworks is a nonprofit organization here in Kalamazoo. We have a mission to empower low-income homeowners to maintain safe, sustainable, and dignified homes. And one way we do that is with these workshops. So we hope you learn a little bit from the workshop. If you do get something out of this, and if you feel led, please visit our website, www.communityhomeworks.org, and click on the donate button. We'd love to get some feedback that way as well. If you're joining us from home tonight, please click on the comment section and let us know where you're joining from, or if you have questions, put those in the comment section as well. We do have at least one person in our studio tonight, so we're thankful that you're joining us. We might have a couple more that join us a little bit later on. Our instructor for tonight is Julie Ryan, and Julie is very knowledgeable in all things having to do with storm windows and screens and all that good stuff. Do you want to share any more about your background, Julie, before we get started?
Sure. So again, my name is Julie. I have worked on storm window and screen repair and general window repair for about, I guess, 5 or so years. And they're actually pretty simple, and I'm happy to tell you more about them. Okay. So there's a few things we're going to cover today. We're going to cover the kinds of windows that you might see in your house, as well as some storm windows that you might encounter. You're most likely to encounter them if you have a particular kind of window. So we're going to talk a little bit about different styles of windows. And then we're going to talk about the parts of storm windows and hopefully give you enough information that you feel comfortable repairing or knowing when to replace these guys at your own house. So first thing that we want to talk about is types of windows. There's a window over here that you can see. And this has it's called a double hung window. There's a lower and an upper sash. The frame is made out of wood. A lot of times you'll also see these made out of vinyl in newer models. Traditionally, these in older homes were made with a single pane of glass, and that doesn't provide a ton of insulation. And that is the big idea behind storm windows. More modern houses usually have double pane or even triple pane glass to provide insulation to make it cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. And you can achieve almost as much insulation value if you just put a storm window, an exterior or interior storm window, with this or whichever style window that you have, and you can make it essentially almost as efficient as a modern window. So types of windows that you might be familiar with, the most common are these double hungs. A lot of people also have casement windows, which usually have a crank and they open out. You can think of it as like the way a book opens. That's the direction it opens. And then there's also styles that it's similar to a casement, but it opens, you can think of it swinging out that direction from the frame. So those are the basic styles. If you have something like a casement or something that swings out and you have single pane glass, which is usually seen with older windows of that style, you would often be looking for an interior storm window. And there are some companies that make interior storm windows. They're not as commonly found at like the hardware store or the home center around you, but it's pretty easy to make a simple interior storm. And these don't even have to be that complicated. They use this style here. And it's a wooden frame that you just build to just inside the dimensions of the window that you want to improve weatherization on. This uses a vinyl plastic and wraps around both sides. So this is actually a double pane interior storm window. And then you just use foam on the frame here. If you guys can see this foam here, we'll see. Yeah, there you go. You can see the foam, and that just gives it a pressure fit on the inside of the window. So if you have one of those casement style or awning style windows that, you know, opens where the glass swings out, this is a great option for you. Most people have the double hung and are looking for a sliding storm window that goes, you know, usually it's in 3 pieces. There's a screen and then 2 pieces of glass. The 2 pieces of glass give you the weatherization in the winter. In the summer, you can open either the bottom or the top, or sometimes both, and then get some air in. And that's primarily what we're going to talk about today. That is what most people encounter on their older homes. So there are some safety concerns I want to make sure that everybody's aware of. If you're working with existing storm windows that might be in older or in poor condition, or you've got double hung windows that are older in poor conditions, you should be careful of the paint that you're interacting with in these situations. This could have lead in it. You can get a lead test kit at most hardware stores and big box stores, and check that. You can also wear gloves, which is always a good idea. You can wear a face mask, which is always a good idea to reduce the chance that you're breathing in old paint or more specifically lead. So that's something to consider. If you've got a broken window pane, that can also be dangerous. So make sure that you're careful if you're trying to take one of these out and you have broken glass. A good way to do that is to be safe with that, is to put like a piece of newspaper over the broken area and just tape it across there. If you have large cracks, you can separately tape those up before you put the newspaper on to try to prevent damage to yourself. All right, so let's talk about parts of our storm window. This is an example of one. It could have come out of a window. It could have come out of a door. Storm windows can be used to create better weatherization for windows, and they can also be used to create better weatherization for doors. And hopefully y'all can see that this is a large storm window here. And you may have these on your house as well. And the glass in those works in a very similar manner. They use a different style of glass that is less dangerous than if it breaks. It's called tempered glass. And you can think about it as the same as automotive glass. So when it breaks up into tons of little pieces that are not sharp, so that you're likely to not be cut by them. Although you can be cut by it, so don't play with it. Okay, so starting to talk about some parts of these storm windows. Important parts. So these are called slide bolts down here. And they do exactly what they say they do. They slide back and forth. And this allows you, if you pull both of these in at the same time, to raise and lower the window to keep it in the position that you want. And typically the tracks that these are in will have notches going along the frame so that you can put it at different heights and it'll lock in. It also has usually a locking spot at the bottom so that it's a nice tight fit. If these break, your window may not seat completely. It may not be able to go up and down well. And if it's not functioning like that, then these may need to be replaced, and they are easy to replace, and it only costs a few bucks. So another part, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a close-up of this one. It's a little harder to see. All right. This right here. Ooh, thank you, Jason. This is called a tilt key. And this tilt key is what holds the window in place when it's in the frame. And it also allows you to, it keeps it in the track while it's moving up and down if you're opening or closing the window. And it also is the part that you have to deal with if you need to take the pane out, either because you need to replace a part or because the glass is broken. So the frame itself is made of aluminum. These corners and the slide bolts that we talked about a minute ago are typically made of aluminum or glass. I'm sorry, or plastic. They don't make them in glass. That would be bad. So you may find these in either of those materials. Some people prefer the aluminum and they say the plastic doesn't hold up. You know, I'm not going to debate about that today. So when you get these new from the manufacturer, they're typically in nice shape. All the corners come together well. These slide bolts work well. They're nice and springy. There's a spring in there to make sure that they're working. Your corner tilt keys up there are in good shape. There's also corners in the bottom down here that you don't see here, but they're in there. Those are typically in good shape. Everything's nice. There is a weather stripping that's holding this glass into the frame. And when this is new, that will be nice and rubbery and soft, and it will create a really good seal. And then there's weather stripping. And the point of the weather stripping is to improve that seal. So that will press against the frame and create not a total, but a substantial air seal against cold or warm air, depending on the season, coming in. So if you're running your AC, this is going to help you in the summer. If you're running your heat in the winter, this stuff is going to help you. If you've got an older window and you're wondering whether or not it's worth fixing, it's really about kind of the condition of it. If all of your weather stripping is shot and the nice rubbery piece of weather stripping that holds the glass in is shot, and you've got multiple broken tilt keys, and you know, maybe this frame is out of whack and it's kind of sticking up and it's not really holding the glass well anymore. Maybe the outside frame isn't in good shape. Maybe it's not square anymore. There are usually two of these glass panes again. Maybe they're not meeting up properly. If you've got those kinds of things going on, you have lost the purpose of this storm window, which is to create an air seal and prevent the indoors and the outdoors from interacting as much as they can. So you definitely get to a point where these are just worth replacing. But if you have a little thing that's broken, you can totally fix it yourself.
Is it worth fixing a storm window that has broken glass? Like, is that something that's a small enough fix, or is that something you should just go and get a new window?
Oh, absolutely. The broken glass, or like any single broken thing, totally worth fixing. If the only thing wrong with this is I, dropped this hammer on it, or, a lot of times people have a rock kick up when they're snow blowing and it'll bust through one of those panels. Sometimes kids in snowballs with rocks. I don't know. There's a lot of ways you can break this. That is totally that's a pretty easy fix, and that is totally worth replacing because glass is actually very affordable. If you are talking about a storm door and you lose the glass there, it's time to start doing some math because tempered glass is more expensive than what's called flat glass, or just kind of the glass you're used to. And then at that point, you'd want to do some math and figure out, well, okay, well, how much is it going to cost me to get that piece of glass versus how much to replace the whole door? And these doors can be expensive or inexpensive. So yeah, if you have a specific question about something like that, feel free to drop it in our chat or even send in an email, and I am happy to give more specific advice on a particular issue. Thank you for that question, Jason. So I'm going to take this guy out and talk a little bit about the whole storm window for a couple of minutes. So this is a storm window in the frame, and this is the part that would normally be attached to your house, this flat spot here. And if you do a good installation, or if someone has done a good installation of these, they should have caulked all the way around this to create a nice seal of this against the house. I can tell you honestly that we've installed a few of these in my house and we did not caulk them. So if it's really well installed, it's gonna be caulked on, but I can't guarantee that it will be. So again, 2 panes of glass here, slide bolts, let the glass slide up and down. In theory. So you can hear that clicking, I imagine, and that clicking is those stops. Okay. So this is summertime. We're having a nice breeze come in. Everything's good. I've got weather stripping on the inside. That's in good condition, so I'm happy to see that. This screen, oh, it wasn't seating properly. It's better now because I moved the slide bolt a little bit. Let's take out this pane and see what the weather stripping on the back of this looks like, if there is any. They're all designed a little bit different, so you may not always see the same thing. So this one only has weather stripping at the top because it's using the weather stripping on the frame itself to create the air seal on this particular style. And it is important to know sort of which window is which in this combination, because it's probably a little bit hard to see, but there's actually a little hook of metal here that helps this window grab into this part of the frame, the bottom of the window above it, so that they create a nice tight seal. So the 2 frames for top and bottom are slightly different. Something to keep in mind if you have to take these apart because say you have a broken glass or you've got a broken part. Important to get out your masking tape and stick a piece on and write top or bottom so that you don't lose track. You can also write front and back because it's easy to get these things all confused. So most common problems that happen for people are either broken glass, broken slide bolts, or broken tilt keys. And you can imagine if both these tilt keys break, that is going to let the window fall forward, which means, you know, it may or may not give you a ton of trouble if this is hooking in nicely. But without those tilt keys, it's going to be hard to maneuver it up and down. So those are the most common things that break. On this one, you can see better than the other one, this rubber channel that holds in the glass. It's black in color, so it's not totally visible, but that actually shows it pretty well. You can see it. If that stuff is all crumbly and in bad condition, that's something to be on the lookout for too. So If you've got, for example, a slide bolt here that's broken, this style is pretty easy to fix. I just need something small, and there's a little hole in the bottom of the frame here. Let's see if I can actually hold enough. Can I turn this camera? Oh, look at that. So it's a little bit close, but there is a little notch in the frame right here. And that little notch is holding a little plastic piece that's keeping this in position. And that is too big to push in there. I figured I'd forget something. There we go. So now that I've taken this out, you can see this little plastic notch, and that is what fits in that little divot, and that lets this guy pull out. And now you can go to the hardware store or possibly the glass store and get a new one of these guys. Usually for about $2. You can also order them online. I can tell you from experience that Gales True Value carries a lot of them in town. I believe Midtown Ace carries a lot of them. Well, at least a few of them. I believe J&G Glass will probably have some. Once you get to the big box stores, they might have them online, but they're probably not going to have them in the store. A really good place that you can look online is a company called Swissco. And I'm not getting any endorsements or money from any of these places. I'm just trying to give you good advice. So Swissco.com has a deep selection of these kinds of products, as well as a lot of videos and advice on replacing the pieces. So if you don't have me, Swissco.com is a good resource. All right, so let's say that we went to Gales and we got a new one of these. I don't think this one will, oh, I do have, nope. I don't think this one will work. No, we'll have to pretend that we just got this one brand new. And you can see there's a spring here. Sometimes this spring will be worn out, and sometimes this plastic piece will break. A lot of times for the slide bolt, it's not necessarily this piece that breaks, but it's this spring that's not working. Or, you know, the whole thing can just slide right out or in, and you don't have any way to see. Nothing keeping it anywhere. And so this little duo is called a dog and a spring. And you can get new springs and new dogs. And those are also available at typically hardware stores like Gales or Ace, True Value or Ace. Again, probably not something that you're going to see at your big box stores unless you're buying a whole new window, in which case it might have them in there already functioning. All right, so let's reassemble this guy. When you want to put it back together, seat your spring in your dog. There's a little groove on the bottom of your slide bolt that all that fits into. And then somehow you have to kind of hold the dog out of the way, the spring out of the way. Feels like you need an extra hand. Just kind of squish that guy in there. And then as you start to get it in, sometimes that spring will pop out, and that's okay. Just shove it back in. And then this is the fun part. You get to where that dog is, And then you got to try to get it to come back out that little tiny hole. Which is sometimes easier said than done. It'll twist. I think I do have a different tool here somewhere.
What do you need, a smaller screwdriver or something?
Yeah, usually a real small headed screwdriver, a small flat headed screwdriver will help. You just have to kind of move this back and forth until you get that dog right where you want it. And then sometimes you just have to encourage it to pop out that hole. So a small screwdriver will work. Something like an ice pick would work if that's what you've got at home. So if you start to get it, and then you just like tap it a little bit, it'll pop right out of that hole, which it just did. So that is a pretty easy fix. Before we fix the other corner, let's consider for a moment that this glass was broken and we needed to replace it. Piece of glass this size, I don't know, maybe $20. So not very expensive. If you have enough of the glass, ideally you can measure the old piece to get an estimate on how big a piece of glass you want. If you don't have enough glass to get an estimate, and the reason why I say this is because go look at something interesting. So if this glass is broken and you need to actually replace it, you could go buy a larger sheet of glass and take it home along with your new glass cutter that you bought and possibly some glass cutting oil if they talk you into that too. And then you can measure it yourself, and then you can score the glass, and it makes a terrible noise, and then you can break it, trying like intentionally break it along the score line. You can do all those things, but for the cost of the price of glass, most hardware stores will cut the glass for you. I believe around here, I know like J&J Glass would do that for you. Gales will do that for you. Midtown Ace will do that for you, I think. And Lowe's, even as I recall, does some glass cutting at their shop. Although the other ones, they sell glass, but you're going to have to go through the whole cutting it yourself thing. I do recommend just letting them cut it. It's so much easier. Okay, so say we wanted to take this whole guy apart because we need to replace the glass. I do recommend starting at the bottom and use that little spot to pop out the slide bolts and the springs. And then you're going to want to take off the bottom piece of frame and then the top piece of frame. And then you can take off the side pieces of frame. Once you've got all that off, you can take all the old glass out of your gasket material here, put your new glass in it, and reassemble everything. I'm going to show you how to take things apart in just a second here. If you are not able, do we have a tape measure? That's one right there. If you are not able to measure the old dimensions of the glass, if you measure the frame, the inside width of the frame, like this one, here, let me do it over here so folks can see it, see what I'm reading on this. If we measure on the inside of the frame, I've got about 25 3/8. Whoops. That's actually really hard to read, isn't it? Trust me, it's 25 3/8. Let's say, okay, so how big do I get my glass? We'll add 1/4 of an inch, okay? If you measure the inside dimension and add 1/4 of an inch, It's going to give you an 1/8 inch of overhang for each side, and that's enough. If you're feeling dangerous, you could go for 3/16 on each side and, go up to 3/8 of extra instead of a 1/4 inch. But in my experience, you're much more likely to end up not being able to put it back together if you err on the big side than if you err on the little side. You can't take just a little bit of glass off. It doesn't work that way. So you're better off having it slightly small. So if you've got one of these, the inside dimensions of your window, add a 1/4 inch to each dimension, and you should have just about the size of glass you need. All right, let's work on taking this apart.
Julie, just a random question for you. I recently bought a new storm window for my house. Oops, there we go.
Yeah.
I recently bought a new storm window for my house, and I got low E glass.
Oh.
It's supposed to be more energy efficient. Is that just a marketing ploy, or is that something real?
That is a great question. Thanks, Jason. That is not a marketing ploy. That is something real. Low E glass has a coating on it that reflects sunlight such that you are going to have less greenhouse effect from your windows on your house, which is really helpful in the summer to keep your house cool. Does it provide a benefit in the winter? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's a trade-off there, but it's usually not much more to get the low E glass in my experience. And this even goes for if you have brand new or newer modern windows and they're double pane and you need to replace one because, again, the snowblower, what is it with snowblowers and those rocks? The cost difference between regular and low E glass is very small, and you do get a significant benefit from the low E glass in terms of reducing that greenhouse effect of the sun kind of beating into the house. So
are they a lot more expensive to replace than if you break your storm window? Does it cost a lot more to get low E glass? And would it be beneficial to get low E glass if you're replacing an old storm window glass?
So your average glass supply house or glass store or hardware store is not going to have low E glass. So it will be more expensive to replace if you want to replace it with low E because it's going to be a special order item. And they're going to, typically the way that's going to work is because it has a coating on it, they're going to need to cut it at the glass supply house. And when they cut it there versus sending you a giant sheet that you cut up into pieces, they're gonna get some money for that. So yeah, if you get the low E, it's probably worth it to put it on your house. If you break one, it's probably not going to be worth it to replace it with another sheet of low E. You're probably just going to put in plain glass at that point. Yep. Did you break one while you were installing it? Yeah. And I haven't looked into actually just buying low E sheet glass. So I could be completely wrong. Some places some manufacturers, you can call them up and be like, hey, I broke this. Can you send me a new one? And, maybe for $50, they'll send you this whole piece. It's always a good idea to check with the manufacturer if you've got a problem, if you've got a newer item. Sometimes the manufacturers can, it's like, yeah, we still make those windows every day. We can send you one of those and it's not going to be very expensive and we'll ship it right to your door. So I do recommend checking with the manufacturer if you've got a newer item of either a storm window or a double pane kind of modern weather window.
Cool. Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. Jessica, do you feel like lending a hand? Excellent. So nice to have people in class. All right. How are we going to do this? can you stand over here on the other side of that camera? Oop, everybody's getting a close-up view. That is perfect. And then turn that one more time. Oop. Yep. And then just kind of hang on to this frame. That should work. All right, everybody come with me. I'm going to swivel us over. Okay. Yeah. So this is our tilt key. It's one of our corners. And we're going to take it out of this frame. This is something that you can do with a basic tool you have around the house, a flathead screwdriver, and a hammer. If you don't have a hammer, I suggest you get one. You can pick these up for like $1.99 at Harbor Freight. So Jessica's holding this for us. She's providing some force I can hit against. And I'm just going to tap this up. Whenever you're doing something with a window, a storm window, I want you to bring the top up and the bottom down rather than working on the sides. You can do the sides after. All right, just a little couple of taps and boom, that came right out. Now you can get a better look at that. We call this glazing. It's just like the glazing you have on a wood window. They use the same terminology. And then now we're going to take out the other side. So Jessica is going to hold that again, and I am just going to tap out the other side. That would be perfect. Thank you. Sometimes you do need to apply just a smidge more force. Boom. And so we took the top off. Thank you, Jessica. And now we can get into things we need to fix. It's much easier to replace this weather stripping. Now, if you want to up your weather stripping, if it's kind of worn out, once this is off, although you don't have to do that, you can replace these tilt keys or corners if they are broken. This is the start of disassembling the window in order to replace the glass if it is broken. You can also replace this glazing if it is worn out. Although, as I said before, if your weather stripping is bad, your corners are broken, and your glazing that holds the glass in is worn out, and possibly your glass is broken, it's time to just start fresh. All right, so let's say that we just bought a new piece of glass here. And we're gonna use our, we're just gonna repair our old frame a little bit. We're gonna pretend one of these guys is broken. So I'm gonna use the same technique. I'm gonna use the same technique to take this out. Except this time I'm going to use my own. Boom. Yay. So now you can go down to the hardware store. Bring this with you. That is key. Bring this or your broken slide bolt or your broken spring. Bring those pieces with you to the hardware store so that you can get something that fits right. There are, I don't know, 30, 50, 100 styles of these. Maybe 10 are still kind of in common use. Occasionally you will go to the store to get a piece for your storm window and they won't make it anymore. And unfortunately, if that's the case, there is nothing we can do for you and you got to start over. Sometimes they just don't make the parts anymore and it can't be fixed. So that is unfortunately true in some circumstances. Once you do get your new parts, everything goes back together just the same way that you disassembled it. So I want you to notice that this is a pressure fitted piece, and that's what these ridges are. They create a pressure fit. There are different styles of these. This is a style that uses little notches in the aluminum to hold the corner in place, just kind of like the little notches that hold that dog in place. And then this is a style that is held in place by dimpling the metal. And this particular window uses friction, but somebody decided to get fancy and crimp this corner right here. Hopefully you can see that. The metal's actually crimped. And this is honestly very common to have the metal crimped like that. And that requires a different approach to fixing it. So I'm going to quickly set this aside, and we're going to look at another window and see how to deal with dimples. I can't decide which end I want to work from. So you can see that this is just a different storm window. We started out with this one. And it has a tilt key again. But you can see here this metal, it's crimped. The aluminum frame is crimped 4 times, 2 on each side of the corner. And essentially what you have to do is take out that metal crimp. And the way that you have to do that is with a drill. You just have to drill the metal out. So when I say these are repairable, there's a lifetime number of repairs that can be made. If you have to drill out the corners to fix a tilt key or something like that, once the corners are drilled out, you can't put that metal back in, right? You can use a little caulk to patch the holes so that it looks nicer. But once it's drilled out and you can kind of recrimp it, there's only a certain number of times you do that. So you break those, a second time, you may have more trouble getting it to reassemble. So hopefully you don't have to do these kinds of repairs often. So fortunately, aluminum, which is what just about all these are made out of, is a super soft metal. And you can just drill out those dimples. Sometimes it can be hard to tell if you've actually gotten through the frame or you're into the metal underneath. It's a lot easier if the corner is plastic, because you can tell when you hit the plastic.
What size drill bit do you use for that, or does it depend on the window?
I'm going to say it depends on the window. So I've got an 1/8 inch bit right here because these dimples are kind of large. On that red window, those were really narrow dimples, and I would use a drill bit just big enough to drill out the dimple. Don't go bigger in this case. But if you go too small, you won't get enough of the metal that's creating that dimple, and then the piece won't come apart. So I'm not 100% sure if I think I'm through, but sometimes it takes a little bit of trial and error. I'm going to say I don't have enough of this. Yeah, you'd like, normally you'd like that to come out easier. But there is another potential issue that I have forgotten about because I used to do this every day and now I don't anymore. Oftentimes, manufacturers, in trying to make these things bulletproof, will dimple both sides. And the dimples on the back side are underneath this weather stripping. So it can make your life a little bit more challenging. If you run into this, like you've already drilled out those holes and now you're like, what? I have to drill out the back too because this isn't coming out and I have to mess with this. At that point, you might decide to just take it somewhere and have it fixed. And there are places in town like J&J Glass or the True Value that will fix these for you. It does cost some money. But this is totally doable. It's less fun. You might want to, you might need to either try to pull this up and out or cut it away with a utility knife to check and see if there is a dimple on the other side. Honestly, I just don't remember if this guy has them on both sides or not. And it's not infrequent. And you can sometimes find out from another part of the window how likely it is. So you can see here that on the back side it's dimpled to hold this corner in, which suggests it's dimpled to hold it in here, which suggests that, yes, it is dimpled to hold it in here. And with that in mind, a trick that you can do if you don't want to mess around too much with cutting away your precious weather stripping that is helping to create that air seal and keep the cold air out. You can get out your Community Homeworks pen and you can see where your dimples were on the front and make a line transferring your dimple location along the side and up to the back. And now you can drill out the dimples on the back without messing around too much with that weather stripping. All right, Jessica, can I borrow you for a second? I'm actually going to give this a couple whacks and see if we've got enough dimple removed to get this separated. It is helpful to have a second person or a squeeze clamp to do these jobs. Nope. Not quite there. Oh, yes, we are. So I can keep going because now I've freed this up. And again, I could then drill out the other side if I needed to replace this. Again, I would take the whole top off if I needed to replace these, if I needed to replace the glass. Take the whole top off if you're working on that end. Take the whole bottom off if you're working on that end. And always do the top and bottom before the sides. So yeah, just in this case, it's a pretty simple fix to just trace that line over from the front to the back. Thank you so much. I am not going to take this apart anymore unless somebody sends in a comment like, you must take that window apart. And when you go to reassemble, you might be able to, you can hit the frame reasonably hard. You don't want to bang on it, obviously, like really hammer it, but you can tap it with a good amount of force to get it back in place.
Do you have to redimple that when you're done then to hold it together, or how do you hold it together?
You can redimple it. If you want to redimple it, you can use a nail set. If you're familiar with what a nail set is, it's usually just a small circular bit of metal. You can think about it looking like, you know, the cutoff end of a Phillips screwdriver. And instead of the exact Phillips head, it just has like a narrow point at the bottom. And you can imagine you can use that to create a new dimple. But as you saw, it's pretty hard for this to come out. So at your house, if you're doing this project, if you put that back in and it's a nice snug fit, don't worry about dimpling it. It's not that big a deal. I mean, it's mostly to keep it solid while it's shipping and sitting on a shelf somewhere and being installed. You know, once it's actually in your house, if you do have to drill those dimples out, and you're just going to stick it right back in and it's fitting pretty snug, no worries. You can just let it be. If it's loose, on the other hand, you would want to redimple it. And I suggest caution when dimpling, caution and gentleness, and use the edge of an existing dimple. Do you have a nail set, Jason? Super, thank you. So you guys are going to learn about another hand tool. These are nail sets that you can buy them singly, or they will often come in a set of 3. Usually one has a very narrow point. Yep, usually one has a very narrow point, one has a medium point, and one has a wider point. And typically what you use these for is to set a nail head below the surface of what you're nailing in, and then you can put a little putty in to patch the hole. I mean, nail sets are super handy and they work for a ton of things, not just that. But if you did want to redimple this, start with a skinny nail set. Start with the hole that you've already got drilled. Move you up so I don't hammer you. And then just try to make a light dimple right at the edge of the old dimple. It's going to be soft there. And bring this corner back for a second. This corner has depressions in it that dimple is supposed to fit into, and that's what really locks it in place to give it structure. So now that you've drilled out the metal dimple, you still want to try to get some connection with that divot. And that's part of the reason why I say to start at the bit you drilled out. So I would usually just kind of work from the edge of that. Give it a couple of taps. You can see there is a small divot just to the side of this one. And I would dimple it only enough to make sure that it was going to hold in. Because every time you hit a metal frame with a hammer, when there's glass in the frame, you know, you have the potential to undo all the work you've just done. So, yeah. So I would be satisfied. I'm also getting like some spring sound, which is fun. I would be satisfied with just a couple of little dimples, as long as, again, that piece was fitting in there tightly. I will tell you that I have broken a lot of windows a lot of glass in windows after having just fixed them, trying to redimple them. There is a specialized tool that will create the crimp. It creates it's a crimper essentially, and it will create that dimple without the use of, you know, a hammer and something you have to hit. It's just a lever, and it'll just squeeze a little dimple into there. You know, if this is your job and you do this for a living, you can get one of those. If you are concerned about doing this, but you have gone ahead and fixed your own window because you felt really comfortable with it, you could go to Gales and say, hey, could you, you know, put new dimples in this for me? Because they have that tool, and it's not something that you probably want to buy yourself. You could go to J&J Glass; they're going to have that tool too. So if you're concerned about it, or that's really not fitting, but you're really afraid to do this, you could take the window in, and they do have a tool that will create that. It's basically just like a pliers with a big head and a point, creates a dimple. Jason, you get all the stuff I forget to talk about. So, what is next?
Are we getting any questions from out there online? If there are questions, please put them in the comment section. How about our audience here?
Yeah, any questions,
Do you
Jessica?
have any questions or comments or anything like that? All right. I can't think of anything that we're forgetting, but I'm sure we'll forget something and think of it as soon as we're off the air.
Right. We are just about an hour, but I'll just mention a couple of other things. You can buy the weather stripping. It's called pile weather stripping. You can buy it in a package like this. You can usually also buy it by the foot at like, I know Gales has it by the foot, and I imagine J&J Glass does too. They may also have it at Midtown Ace. I should really stop by there and check on what it is all they're doing so that I know whether I should be sending people there. But Gales and Midtown are not that far apart, and if you go to Midtown and they don't have it, they'll probably just send you over to Gales. So it won't be the worst thing if you wandered through Midtown and bought some stuff there too. So yeah, if your weather stripping is worn out, that is another replaceable part. If your exterior frame up here, you know, if this exterior frame is coming apart, it's time to buy new. I think it's fair to say that you can't, almost no one is going to be able to fix that for you or find a replacement for you. Even places that could theoretically build these things from custom are probably not going to have the one that matches your style. So if that outside frame is shot and things are, you know, not staying in there good, it's time to replace. You're not getting a good air seal out of that setup anyway at that point. All right, well, real quick, let's pretend that, well, we don't have to pretend. We did sort of fix this window. I just need that other corner, which I may have lost. It's got to be here somewhere. There's only so many corners. Okay, well, I was going to put this one back together, but mostly because I wanted to show you a little bit about like easily taking them apart and putting them back together. But I seem to have temporarily misplaced that other corner. Oh, I just found it. Excellent. Because that was a dicey situation. All right, last thing we're going to do is reassembly. All right, this is our window we have to put back together. I did not put any tape on it, so I do not know what the front and back is. That is frustrating. Now I have to actually think about stuff. While I think about it, I'm going to stick this corner back in. Again, I'm going to start with the top, not put it in the side first. This one can actually work against the table, which is handy. All right. Make sure that your glazing is fully seated. It's helpful if you got a gap there. Squeeze that back together and put a piece of masking tape around that to hold it there. And don't worry about if it folds over onto the glass, because you can just trim it off with a utility knife after the fact. All right, so what's the front, what's the back? Well, I know that the slide bolts are what I use to make it go up and down. So that's the part that's facing me in the house. All right, so that's how I've got it oriented. And then I know that the hook we talked about on the back and the weather strip is on the back to seal against the rest of the frame. So that is how I can orient myself if I forgot to mark this, which I did. Putting it together, you can do just with, it's much easier to put it together than take it apart, because you can stand it up on end, and now you have something to hammer against. And this is something that works best if you go a little bit at a time on either side. Make sure that glass is, or that frame is fully seated on the glass. And then when you go to reassemble, remember, it's not going to go straight in because of those tilt keys. You have to angle it to get your tilt keys in the track. And then slide in your slide bolts. Bring it to the lowest setting. It'll go. And then let those slide bolts seat. And theoretically, you know, there's kind of a happy center that it should be seated in. And that's pretty good right there. So
I'm guessing it might be a little easier if the window is actually attached to
it's going to be a ton easier if the window is attached to a house. This there's nothing holding this in place. So yeah, it's going to be easier because then you have something you're working against rather than something that you could inadvertently move.
All right. I don't see any other questions coming in.
Great.
Jessica, last chance for questions. You're all set. Okay. Julie, thank you very much for being here with us tonight. Thank you all for joining us at home, and thank you, Jessica, for joining us as well. Tonight's workshop, I forgot to mention at the beginning, this is considered a Green Living Series workshop. Green Living Series is a series of classes we're doing to try to help save our resources, save greenhouse, or eliminate or reduce greenhouse gases, but also reduce how much fossil fuels we're using. So the Green Living Series is made possible by a grant from the Kalamazoo Community Foundation. So we really appreciate their help to make these programs possible. Thank you all very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week again for another great class. Have a great evening.
Bye, everyone.